Let me share my screen. Hello everyone, my name is Kakoza, and yes, this is our next session. So we ended up with I think it was we ended up here in private functions, and we said that in our next session we are going to be tackling classes, BOM and DOM, I think asynchronous and synchronous functions. They will also be covered, I think, as we cover the document object model examples. And yes, so let's get started. For us to get started, let me close this, and I think I can open up a new folder. Today is session 9. Session 9. So click on open. Documents build cohort 2 sessions, and yes, we are going to be having session 9. Okay, so we are going to be starting from class.html, classes, not .html but classes. Session 9, I think new file, I'm going to name it classes.html to explore JavaScript that to explore classes. Yes, one of the most fundamental and core JavaScript concepts is classes. So mainly classes are blueprints. So these are like blueprints for reusable data. So for reusable data, and we're going to look at most of the concepts here. What do you mean by blueprints for reusable data? So let's take a scenario of having an object. I think for us to access our JavaScript, we can start with doc type. Am I still connected? Hopefully my screen is visible. Let me check. Okay, I think it is. Yes, it is visible. We are going to start with an HTML. We are starting with an HTML page, and okay, so here we can have HTML. And inside here we have the head. Here we also have the body. So this is where we are going to do our JavaScript. Just a quick recap. If I come to this page and I right click and I inspect, we see JavaScript running in what we call the console tab. We have different tabs. We have elements, shows HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript. But in the console, we can see JavaScript that is running. We have also source, mainly to show the folder structure, network, performance. This is like the time it is taking for your pages to load if you're fetching data from somewhere. We have memory, we have application, memory. Show a bit about memory. We have application. So you can access storage, sessions, cache, cookies, things like that, lighthouse and recorder. So we are concentrating on the console, not just the console, but also the interactivity of our page. For example, when you look at Google, the first time you start the Google page, it will usually have the search bar, and then after you searching, it will catch the most searched browsers and put them below here. So this interactivity, most of it is done by JavaScript, if not all. And yes, from that I think we can continue. So here I can just have a div. I might not even use it for now. And for us to write JavaScript in this page, we use the script tag. So with the script tag, I could now have an object, probably let me say let an object called of a dog be assigned to. So you can have the dog name. And whenever you're creating an object, use like the name and the value pair. It's called the attribute, and so there is use this sort of thing, and you have one thing here and then its value, the attribute and its value. So here maybe I'm going to name it JavaScript Jabva. So I can have its weight, probably 10 kgs, color brown, and then breed, can have it as mastic bull, or pit bull, and just whatever you want to have. So I now have an object. From here I can have, let me say, recreate this in a function. We have a function of dog that will accept the dog name, the weight, the color, and the breed properties. So if I have such a function that is waiting, so from this object where my object is a dog object, I have key value pairs, and the dog name is the key, and the Jabva is the value. So yeah, so now I have created a function that accepts these attributes, and for me to initialize these attributes, I will have to use the this dot keyword, this dot dog name, and assign it to the dog name. So this dot weight, I think someone's microphone is on. Okay. So I need to weight, and this dot color gets assigned to this color attribute, and again this dot breed is assigned to the breed of the dog. So if I have this function, I can create an object from this function. Maybe let dog1 be assigned to new of the dog object, and then give it my new maybe another, yes, I can call it Jackie, and the age from the function I can pass these attributes to create a new dog, and maybe this is 30, color is brown, and then breed is cancel Labrador. So from this function, I can create new instances or new dog types, like different kinds of dogs. So with just this as the function. But why do we need classes? So one of the reasons we need classes is always to have just one blueprint, and then from that blueprint we can create our own instances. An example would be that I have a blueprint of a vehicle. Maybe has an engine, has tires, and things like that. And then from there I can create other instances, probably a motorcycle. Then describe this one has two tires, and things like that. But in a general vehicle we have tires, or even add more attributes or subtract some of the attributes. But when we write things like this, a function, that means that every time we want to get something from this function, maybe one of the attributes like dog name unknown to present, we shall have to write another function, which is hectic. But with a class, there is that flexibility of just adding in what is missing, as long as you can access the blueprint. So rewriting this function as a class would be class dog, and yes, since we already have the object for classes, we declare them with just the class and then the class name and opening curly and closing curly brackets. So they're a bit different from functions, where for functions we had to put opening and closing parentheses in which we put the parameters. But for classes, we just use the word class and then the class name, and we open and close brackets. Now classes, every class must have a constructor. So you can always use the class, what they call inherit, but you always also inherit the constructor. And if you don't initialize it in your own way, it will take the values that it had in the initial naming class, as we shall see. Excuse me. So in the constructor we have the dog name, the weight, the color, and the breed. So we are creating the function if it were a class, and then we initialize. So this dot dog name is assigned to the dog name of the incoming attribute, this dot weight, okay, I hope I'm still presenting. This dot weight is being assigned to weight. This dot color being assigned to color, and this dot breed is being assigned to breed. So now whenever we are declaring a variable from this class, we can just say let am I really still sharing? Okay, all right, yeah, it's okay. So let's can just say dog be assigned to new. So dog, here I can give it to Jafari, and probably the weight is 2.4. This is brown, and this is chow chow as the breed. So we are, this is I think a good start. So probably we can say, can console log and see if we have it. So .log dog, and if I start to run this, so it looks like my JavaScript. So my script tag, I made a mistake. Can say this is dog2. So I had an error in writing the script tag. Okay, so let dog here. My screen is not visible. Is it visible now? Should I? Okay, I think now my screen is visible. So this was here, this is a constructor, The reason we are having this error is because this was put inside a class. So the class is closing from here, and we can put these right here. Okay. So if we inspect, here we have the console, syntax error. Let me refresh. Syntax error, cannot declare class twice. So here I have class dog and the function. So this is the same thing as this. Okay. So let me first so yeah, we have the dog with the names. Because the dog was an object, if I put it down, you can see that the breed, the color, the key, and the values. And then there is this dog prototype, something we are going to look at also. Yeah. So instead of having a function that whenever we need to access, we shall have to recreate a new instance of that function, we can have a class, and from that class we just create instances, like copies of the class, but with attributes specific to what we have created. The analogy I gave was for a vehicle. It can be a dog, and maybe this dog is of an attribute. It could be an animal, and then from one animal you are getting the different animals. So each animal has an attribute, but they all have similar attributes in the animal class. So here console.log, so Java mastic bull. Okay. Let's continue a bit. So we've been looking at just the way we really initialize classes. It should have the class name, just as opening and closing curly braces, and must have this function. So what is really a constructor? A constructor is used to initialize or declare the variables that are in that class. So it's a method that is supposed to be in every class. Yeah, so if you create a class and you don't give it a constructor, it won't work. Another name we can have here is can create a new class person and a constructor. Give him first name and last name. So these are the attributes of the person. Then we have this dot first name being assigned to first name, and this dot last name being assigned to last name. So if I have different persons, I can select P1, person 1, be assigned to new. So this is the way we create instances from the object. We use the new keyword and then the class name, and give it values based on the attributes we have in the constructor, or they can be actually declared up here before they're in the constructor. Okay, we shall see some examples in that. So this will be new person, and here you can have Aaron or Jumbo. So I can just, if I want to create, so this slate is not supposed to be within the class, because this is the class. So out of the class here, I can create that, and then can console that class, or we can use we can use this variable as we want to use it. Okay. So we can go to something that is really needed in a class, so which are called methods. That is really useful in classes. And what are these methods? So in a class, we can specify functions. This means that our object can start doing things using the object's own properties. So let's say we want to print the name, or doing things using its own properties. And functions in a class are called methods. So what do I say? So if I have a function within a class or on a class, it is called method. This is called a method. And okay, we are going to see some of these. So, but the difference is, if I'm to define this function, we really don't use the function keyword. We do not use the function keyword. We just write the function. We just start with the function name. The method name. I think the method name. So we can extend our person class. So I have a person. I can create a method in the person class. Maybe I can call it greet. So I don't have to put a function keyword because it is a method on a class. And then here I define my logic for this method. Logic for the method. Probably let's just take it as a log. Console.log. Can say hi here. This is interesting for probably a given name. It's that first name. So that's it. So we have created the greet function inside the class person, the greet method inside the class person, and we always must have a constructor on our classes. We can usually call this we can always call these methods outside of the class. Maybe for example here we can so let p1 equals new person, this is the constructor, and give it our values, which is Aaron or Jambo. So I can call the greet method. Let me say I can say p dot greet and console.log p1. This is p1. So since we wanted to pass the names, I can pass in this Aaron and Ojambo, then dot greet to see if then we console log p1 and yeah, let me see how that looks. Fresh. So p1 is just okay, first name Aaron Ojambo. So if I call p1.greet, I can give this a variable. Assign to okay, hi there, this is interesting for Aaron. So you can see that this function has executed. Hi there, this is interesting for the first name, and then it went for Aaron. So if I make this last name, it will go for, yeah, it will log Ojambo. Just this is a very, very crucial part. I can repeat it once again. So the reason why we create classes is to create blueprints so that we don't have code repetition, where things that are grouped have similarities. Those similarities can be put in something, in one object or in one class, I can say. And then we can always have methods that are defined in that class and use those methods. So with just this in JavaScript, we usually use things like math.random. What this simply means is that it could be a class, it could be a function, and there is a method in a class called random that will always return a random number. So the logic that is always given to that class is a random number, and then the way we call it is we usually use math.random, and it generates a random number. But this is where it comes from. There is a class, it could be math itself, and then there is a method that is defined that returns something. We have seen things like math.flow, we've seen methods, inbuilt methods like date.now. So this simply means that JavaScript has inbuilt-in methods in given classes that are accessed or that do certain, like certain things. So date.now will always return the current date from the epoch. I think we shall, for this, I think they will be explored as we do programs, and you can also explore many of those inbuilt in JavaScript programs. Probably we shall explore them just briefly. So these methods can also take in parameters. For example, here I can choose to have a method that I can say it's a complement and takes in two parameters. Let me say its name and object. And I can, I'm looking for some logic. I can always return that's wonderful. As object and then the name. So for this, if I wanted to probably use this method, I'll have to send in the required parameters. So you can say let I complement be assigned to P1 which is an object formed from the class, and I call the method and I give it let me say gift is a chilava. So yeah, so that's a wonderful chilavo kasongo. Okay, so these are different mechanisms on which you can build. Maybe you can say this could be having a lot of logic and it is returning probably the sum, it's returning the multiple. You can create your own objects with logic for that method, and then you get that logic and you always grab the returned value. So that's that's one of the things that classes have, even without inheriting yet. So these are all powerful concepts, but in a way you have to practice them to get familiar. So we can also talk about we've talked about methods. We can talk about properties. So properties are also sometimes called fields, and they hold the data for the class. So we've seen such properties already here. So constructor, these ones are the ones that holding data for the class person. They are properties. And we can also add properties if you want to. But actually having a class like this where properties are accessible is a dangerous thing, because most of the time you don't want your properties to be accessible, or you don't want people to just add data anyhow. Maybe you want a way of sealing it, of like privatizing those fields, so that maybe you have a way to sieve out what is true and what's not true. So okay, we can look at example of how we can make it them not accessible a bit. So can have a new class of the same thing. I think here I'm going to call it person 1. And the way to make them inaccessible is to declare them, or to have them with a hash prefix. So hash first name, excuse me, first name 1. Since the class is a different class, I think we can leave it at first name and hash last name. So if I have a constructor, which every class must have, constructor, we have a first name and last name. One of the best ways to become good at anything is to practice it. So in case you need these, like these files that I'm making, you can always request for them. So this dot first name will be, and this dot last name will be last name. So in any case, if I console log this, we shall get an error. So if I create a new object, p2, so to be assigned to new person 1, and I console log it can be just p2 or p2 dot first name. Let me dot log. Let me create a p2 dot first name even before properly. First name is not accessible outside the class person 1 because it has a private identifier. Even before I look at my console, I'm already warned. So this is one of the ways to make your properties not accessible. And even if I just say so log p2, I'll again first name, last name, Assad. So this is p1 and p2 is not. Let me first try last name just. So if I put a last name first name, last name. If I put them maybe first name without the hash, because I want to access the values of the constructor. Since we have assigned them here, we have assigned them to these unaccessible variables. But so when I write this, I get undefined, meaning that this Rambler and Casada have not been sort of accessed outside, because these are private. Also, if I had here a hash, that one will just show you that first name is not accessible outside the class person1. Outside this class, it's not, because it is private because of the hash. So sometimes to access these private variables, probably you want to keep the declared variables private. Then you create variables that a user can access, and there is some validation. Then those values after validation are stored in the private variables. So there is one of the ways we can do it is we can have, I think that would be really a bit far, but one of the ways I think we can create some sort of if-else statements, or the most used way is accessing them through methods called getters and setters. And first and setters. So if I'm to say what are these are special properties that you can use to get this data from a class, and to set or to probably add data to a class. Yeah, to these fields on the class. So getters and setters are computed properties, and they are more like the previous functions, but they are special for adding data and adding, if you want to set. So the setter is for adding and at least reading data from this class. So since they are specialized on that, we can look at and see how we can use them to navigate this issue of private variables, which is really required mostly if you want to get data from a user, because sometimes a user will give you data that will manipulate your database, maybe some escape strings that are going to throw your database or delete your database. JavaScript is used to manipulate a lot of things. So in most cases, you want what you have to be private, and then in a certain way you validate, and after validating, only after validating, then you can store this data in your database, or read it from the database, or take that query and use it to manipulate your JavaScript, or something like that. So most of the time, we call the getters and setters accessors. So yeah, though they look like functions or like methods because they have the opening and closing parentheses, they're actually not. They are just used to access and things like that. So if we are to continue on a way of how we can solve this issue, this is P1, person 1. I think we can add some. So with methods, what we are doing was just to write the method greet, and then we define what we want the method to do. With a getter and a setter, we have to define it with the get keyword. So, and give it the method name. These are not actually methods, they are called getters and setters, simply used to access data. So The reason I'm getting this error is, again, I'm writing this outside of the class. It's supposed to be here. So get first name. We shall see this consistently in other languages like Solidity, but here we can use a return. So because we have no way to access this, we can, okay, this dot hash first name, and then we can also so when we get it, that means that we have picked that variable. So now we can set it with the first name value that we send. Because actually, if I just console log just p2 here, just console log p2, the values will be seen because they are actually there. Okay. Syntax error, unexpected token. So when you just console log p2, the values are stored in p2, but they are not stored in the class because they should be stored in the first and last name. So they are stored in a constructor, but they are stored because they are passed to the constructor, but the constructor fails to pass them here. So before they are passed here, we can get them using the getter function. And then when we are getting, so we can get this using the getter function and then set this to this from the setter function. From when we get them, we can usually do some checks and then assign them through the setter function, which is set, so first name. We shall pass the variable and then assign this variable to the private variable. We assign to. So mostly for you to set something, for you to set this variable, private variable, to this variable that was obtained from here, or that was passed from here, you must first get this private variable, must first make it accessible. If the getter is not there, then it will not be signed to it. It can also be the same, the getter function, which is get. This last name can be any function, any method name, but as I said, these are not methods, though they resemble methods, so they are getters and setters. So this getter, and then we return this dot last name, so we access the last name. And then we can set it with the set last name. We pass last name, which are the ones in our constructor. And then this dot. Be assigned to last name. So these are powerful because they can give you access to private variables through manipulating the data that a user has put in, and they will be seen as we move on in the programs. So now again here, if I console log p2 dot probably last name. So initially it was undefined, but now it will be defined. Reference error console. Okay, so cursor without the getters and setters, it will be undefined, because apart from passing in these values, they are left not set because of inaccessibility of the declared variables by the hash prefix. Perhaps, does anyone have something to add on? You could actually share a screen and yeah. All right. Okay, so I've had things like prototypes. I think, yeah, we are still going there. And inheritance. So inheritance is our next topic. I think as we go into inheritance and mostly the DOM, we shall see how we can bring all this together. And yeah, I think we can just continue. Otherwise, hope Aaron is okay. The ardent one. Yep. So we are going to do look at inheritance. Okay, inheritance is one of the key concepts of object-oriented programming, and as it is called object-oriented programming, we program based on objects. Object-oriented, and yeah, I think it can be better demonstrated. So in inheritance, we can have a parent class and probably have a child class that is inheriting from a parent class. This is where we start bringing such definitions: parent, child. Yeah, so a child will inherit properties from a parent class. Let me say, for example, if you needed all sorts of vehicles, I've given the vehicle objects in your application. You could specify a class named vehicle, in which you specify some shared properties and methods of vehicles. Then you would then go ahead and create the specific child classes based on this vehicle class. So for example, car, bicycle, motorcycle, boat. Hopefully a boat is a vehicle. So this could be, yeah, one of the very simple versions of inheritance. I think we can demonstrate this. So I have a class have vehicle, and have a constructor, we have a color, current speed, and max speed. So I have this dot color, initializing them, color, this dot current speed, and this dot max speed, max speed. Then probably we could have a method here. Method can be called move. So this method can be probably moving at the speed of, just console log and moving at the speed of, yeah. And then we could have another method, accelerate, that accepts a parameter, the amount of or speed that you need to accelerate, and yeah, this dot current speed plus equals amount. So this statement is the same as this dot current speed hopefully this can go away. Okay, I think it has failed, but yeah, this is the same as this dot current speed is equal to this dot current speed plus amount. So the plus equals is the same as this will equal to this plus this. So you find plus equals, you'll find minus equals, minus equals, you'll find times equals, minus minus is the same as minus 1, and plus plus, all plus 1. Yeah, you find some things like that. So we have our class called vehicle. It has two methods, which is the move method, which simply shows the speed at which it is moving, and then it has the accelerate method, which will get the current speed and add on the speed that that the user has input, or yeah, something like that, that the person using maybe the vehicle has suggested. Yes. So from here we can have a child class. So we can say class, we can go for motorcycle, and the motorcycle will not perhaps have all the classes, all the methods, or it might have more methods. It will just make sure that it inherits or gets all the methods and the properties of the vehicle class. So when we want to inherit, we use the extends keyword. Extends, not just extend, but extends. Then the class we want to inherit. And then now we start. So for our constructor, though we are inheriting, we have to again be explicit about the properties of the constructor. So color, current speed, and max speed. And then there is something new. So if we want to always use the similar properties, let me say we want to use the same properties as our vehicle, we use the super keyword. And then we put the properties. So the super keyword is used to say that for these properties, I use the same properties as the vehicle. And we can add our property, another property here. Let me say this dot fuel being assigned to just fuel. So one thing with React is that I think this can be assigned to 200. When you assign a variable value, then to automatically get its type, whether it's an integer or something like that. Yeah. So this means that we have extended the vehicle, so we have inherited its methods, and we have added on, in the constructor, we have added on a fuel property. We can also add on some of our personal methods, all override. So adding on a method, I can add on downhill. So this maybe you can say we drive on one wheel here. So that means that you have the flexibility after inheriting a class of adding your own methods, of adding your own properties. So the child can have more properties or lesser properties. Overriding is also allowed and things like that. So the superword in the constructor is calling the constructor from the parent, the vehicle constructor in this case. So this makes sure that the fields from the parent are set as well, and that the methods are available without having to do anything. So yeah, that's the best thing of the super word. We've also seen that you can define your own methods. So whenever you are inheriting, this super keyword is not optional. As you get the constructor, from the constructor, you have to put it there. It is a must, so that it is what sets the methods and the properties from the parent class. So from this, probably we can create, we've created our class, now we can create instances of a motorcycle, moto1, GP, be assigned to new cycle. So I can say this is black. Color, current speed. Maximum speed be 300 kilometers, and we added our own property, which was fuel. So here probably instead of, I can put fuel, it's not fuel, fuel, and whatever I define here could be gasoline, jet fuel. Okay, let me say GP, yeah, or gasoline. So now you can use that. You can console log, you can call the methods, yeah. So probably GP dot, here we have downhill, but we can also access these methods, accelerate, downhill, maybe dot move. So move does not require any to pass in any value. Accelerate requires you to pass in a value. To accelerate, we can remove the downhill and probably console log that. But these methods can actually be expanded, and I think we are going to be getting more mature as we go through more code. Can't find fuel. Okay, so can't find fuel. I think this is because in this constructor I had to add fuel. So super is to initialize from the parent class. This must be in your constructor. And yeah, so okay, so this is okay. All right, I think the next we can look at is where are all these lines coming from? Prototype or prototypes. So what is a prototype? So this is a mechanism in JavaScript that makes it possible to have objects. So when nothing is specified, when creating a class, the objects inherit from the object.prototype. Yeah. So if nothing is specified, we have the object dot prototype. So this is what you see here. When I come on MotoGP here, I don't know if you can see below. So right here on the MotoGP, if I click this arrow down here we have motorcycle prototype. So JavaScript can give you a prototype for you to access most of these things. So there's motorcycle prototype, there's vehicle prototype. You see in here we have the methods, accelerate constructor as a function, the move method, and we again have object prototype. So if nothing is defined, the object prototype is always can always be retrieved, where we have define getter, define setter, lookup getter, and all these methods. In the constructor, again, we have different arguments, assign target sources, and all these methods. So JavaScript can give you a capability to manipulate a lot of things on a web page, a lot of things that a user interacts with, even with minimal code in the web page. You'll see that you can create websites like this, where in your HTML you might only have just this div, and even when there is nothing in the div, and there's a script. So let me say an example is I made this main.js, and so inside my script, so this I put here the script, and here so I link to main.js src, which stands for source, is assigned to main.js. So if in my script I link for this, you're going to find, as actually we go into frameworks like React, where you have such a page with just this. But because of this script, JavaScript can create the interactivity that a user is having, the pages and things like that. Sometimes you can go and inspect a page, and then you just find a simple border and you ask, where is the content? Yeah. Okay, this is still the same. Okay, so so the prototype is a built-in JavaScript class that we can use, we can access. We don't need to look at how it is implemented, but we can actually use it. So using probably the class name .prototype. So if I wanted to access the prototype of this motorcycle, I'll simply say motorcycle.prototype and manipulate it. Maybe probably the downhill, be assigned to a function, and yeah, manipulate that prototype, or manipulate the attributes of the prototype. We are going to see most of these in detail as we visit the DOM, but just know that your class will always have a prototype here, and then also the parent, we can see its prototype, and I can say vehicle class.prototype, maybe .accelerate, and then manipulate the accelerate method, or redefine it. Manipulate, I mean redefine it. We can also add functions by just accessing the prototype to your class or your classes. So I think we can first make this go a bit bigger, and then okay. So I can say let me say motorcycle dot prototype So if I say dot speed up, and assign it to a function. So with this, this will add on a new function called, not a new function, a new method called speed up that will be expecting a variable, or that will be expecting an input. And even though our class is already written, the prototype can have that capacity because it is holding all the functionality, all the objects of the class. So the prototype will hold the objects of the entire classes that you have, and you can use the prototype access to do anything: add functions, edit function, add methods, edit methods, add properties, and things like that. So some of the ways of the accessed fields of the prototype will be seen in the DOM. I think this is going to be our next what we are going to go on next. One thing before we go to manipulating the DOM, how far have we spent, is I want to encourage us to read on the built-in JavaScript methods. So there are really many. Here I can create, you can just have like a few. So built-in .html. So these built-in methods will help you speed up things. So probably you want to get the date, instead of recreating an entire function or class for the date that will always pick the date. You can use the inbuilt-in function of the inbuilt methods of that date. And this inbuilt-in, the way as I touched them, they are built the same way classes are built. That's why we always use the dot notation to access them. Yeah. So I have some research about them, but I think we need to go to our next topic, because it is kind of a big topic. Otherwise, yeah, I'm okay with any feedback before we go to before we go to the next topic. It can be an addition. Probably you would want to, it can be an addition. Maybe you want to highlight some of the very crucial inbuilt functions. One of the reasons I've missed them is because I think as you program and you use an inbuilt method, it can be very easy to explain, but there can be those ones that are used regularly, and some you could suggest or share. Any Any feedback on that, on what we've covered, or you're waiting for what's next? Okay, so somebody wants to look at object constructors. As alternative to classes. All right. Probably give us a brief. Can be just a hazy research. And yeah, as we also have some cool down before we go to the next topic. All right. I'm seeing silence. What's happening? Yeah, we can have some minutes and relax a little. It's 1846, I think 1850. We can start looking at the DOM. I think for the DOM we are going to be looking at it as we explore very many use cases, and hopefully that will really give us some view of it. And if you have some clear use case that you're familiar with, yeah, we can share it. Otherwise, I think it's a very, very needed topic. All right. So BOM stands for, I think, Brouser Object Model. And when you come to a browser and click console or F12 on your key, let me just have this new browser. Inspect. So if I click inspect and I click on console, all these things come, and so let me click. This is all information about my browser, the extensions that are not working. So we started at 48, okay. The unquote type error, overrides, arrays, here there's an array, MetaMask. So all these are objects. And the browser model is the window object. So sometimes you have things like window.location, window.ethereum. So this window is this visible thing, and in the browser object model we have the document object model. And okay, probably we can start with just the browser model. So open with here intro. I think we are going to have intro browser object model, and have the DOM. Types, and selecting DOM elements. I think we are going to, okay, we can look through it and see. So as we have been explaining, that the browser object model, sometimes called the window browser object, is the one that gives us access to this window and all the objects in the window. And it's like the cover of everything that is in both this window and this entire thing that you saw on the screen. So inside that window, we have the document object model. So the document object model covers your document, covers the user interactivity, and many of those things. So things that we saw like the prototype, we are all in the window. And yeah. So some of the most important objects maybe we can look at from the browser object window are history, navigating, and location. So if I just click in this window, okay, good enough. So it's expanding. Window, enter. You see that it is returning to me an array where we have a lot of things. We have window, we have this object. So this is the window object. We have window self. When I click the drop down, we have the window. At position 0, we have window self. We have blur, closed, focus, frames, parent, post message, then top, symbol. At 1, we have a top, blur. All these are properties of this window, and we can take advantage of them as we are manipulating what the user will see on this page. You've seen sometimes when your internet goes off, and then Google gives you a game to play while your internet is off. That's all manipulation of the window. Fetch, frame element, gadgets. So there is really a lot, and we have location here. So these are one of the most important attributes of the window. So when I say window.location, I'm meaning this attribute, and inside the location we have the links, we have the assign, hash, host name, the link, href, origin, path name, port. So all this information, you can access it in your JavaScript and maybe manipulate, probably redirect all cache items and things like that. So the most important attributes of the window, of the BOM, which is the window, is the history, the navigator, and the location. So if I'm to look at, we can find the history. So we have the navigator here, and you can find the type of the browser, app code, app name, Netscape, app version. So you could want to get which device is accessing your website at that time. You know, there are some times when people maybe are changing, using VPN, and you can just get the device and maybe disable it if they are doing a denial of service attack. So, and things like history and much more. So all these are properties of the window. Okay, so if I need to access a property, I can just say it's a window dot location. I can also write this in my JavaScript, as we shall see. So I will access the DOM string, the location property. So window dot location will give me that. So if I say window dot history, maybe I've written a program that checks for the history of the user, and based on the history of their search, it can recommend which product the user is interested in. So I can always fetch .go and define, I have to define here window dot, let me say Ethereum, and see if we have the Ethereum. It's not defined yet. Object window dot history. So you need to take time to familiar yourself with the, so here you can see history, to familiar yourself with these objects, because as you build complex user-friendly programs, you'll find that you need to really always access properties of the window to know how the user is doing. Some people, you've heard of websites that record every click that you do, how much time you spend on the website, how much time you spend on a post, so that with that data in real time they can suggest what to show you, how to keep you intrigued and engaged, and things like that. So even here in the window.history, we have the length, scroll restoration, state, and we have the prototype itself. So in the prototype, we have all these properties that you can use again. Okay, as of now, it might not be making sense, so probably we need something that starts to make sense. And also, it's inside this window that we have the DOM, the Document Object Model, and the DOM element. So the window is the entire thing, the entire JavaScript object, and inside there we have, I think we've looked at to write window.history into -1 and go type error. Okay, So let me try now to start having a console .log to see .directory and window, probably .navigator because window is a big. And here you can get the navigator. So if I want to get just the properties of the navigator, clean, this is what I do, console.directory. It will bring me the entire things, Bluetooth, even those that want to use the Bluetooth properties, connection, network information, cookies, enabled, credentials. So sometimes you want to disable some of these, hardware, currency. This look like login information. These look trivial, but actually these are the objects that people use to manipulate. What users view, what users interact with, and things like that. Vendor, Google Inc. Every information, WebKit persistent storage, deprecated. Okay. Perhaps we can go to using it, but one of the other interesting things and unique property of window is the location which we have looked at. The location will contain the URL, the current web page, if you override parts of that property. And I'm not going to dwell so much on the window. I think I've spent some time on it. So let me go to the DOM. Before here we are going to use a lot of HTML. And I believe we all have some knowledge about HTML. Because we are going to be accessing most of these in HTML pages. And that will make a lot of sense. So okay, this is tick, and if I have that tick, a spread, this can be also done, and then I think we can go here. So what's the document object model, or the DOM? It's a way of displaying the structure of HTML documents in a logical tree. So if I'm to show us the DOM, let me say I have I don't know whether this page. So this will be good. Let's download. Is my internet that bad? So taking such a thing like this. So whenever you have an HTML page, and this is the way the DOM works. So you have the HTML, because we usually put our elements inside of elements. It's like they are nested. So the head will go this side, and inside the head we have the title, under the body, and inside the body. So the DOM accesses these elements in such a way. So sometimes if you are going to access the divs, the body, so when you access the body, it will affect all the elements in the body. And the body is this entire thing without this one. So this is the body. The head is the one that appends the words and the icons and the metadata, the titles and things like that. All right. So let's I think start with some examples. DOM1 HTML. Okay, so I really want to exhaust the DOM, but I think it's a better thing if we can start from examples. So one way we access elements of an HTML page. Let me start it. Oh, this is crazy. Doc type HTML. Okay. HTML. Here we are going to have the head. And we are also going to have the body. So in the body we can have just a div. And that's all. And we can populate this body with just the DOM. So one of the ways we access the body is through something we call query selector. So script. So this is one of the elements of the DOM. There is what we call query selector and query selector all. Okay, so what are the elements? So the body, the div, these tags are called HTML elements. And yeah, let's have let's simply take an example. So here I can give my head, I can have a title. JS tester. And inside here in the body, probably I can have h1. Okay, in the h1 tag, we start with hello body, and you're simply just going to have a div. This is a test of grid. So in here I can have a class, and it could be output, and here have a class also called output. So all right, the easiest way to access this is using the query selector. So for us to get the query selector, I will use the document. So this is a window is a document, and we usually use document to access whatever, either attributes or classes or IDs. So if it is CSS, we access them differently, and we are going to do that, I think, next. So document dot query selector. So with query selector, I can access elements, I can access I can access classes. So if I'm to access a class, I use the dot attribute dot output, and this is also the same way we access the class in CSS. Yeah, so I can decide to change in HTML. So when I use the dot output, okay, inner HTML is also inner text or inner HTML is an attribute of the DOM element. So the best way we can learn this is through doing. You can also like learn about most of those. There is inner HTML, inner text. There are click methods. I think we are going to be going through them as we do them. So if I dispose these and I go live, okay, so you will see that my words have changed. This is now hello world, a test of grit, and this was hello body, a test of grit. But because I've accessed the output and I've influenced the text of the inside, I've managed to change it to this. You can now change the entire HTML. So when I do the dot output on query selector, I will only access the first class that has the output, that is output. And the way the website is read, it's read from top to down, the way the HTML document is read. If in case I need to access, I want to make the effect to both of these classes, I'll use dot selector all, and if I save this, refresh, query selector all, but output inner text hello world, dispose of and go live. Okay, so hello body, a test of grit. It's as if it is not seeing anything. Okay. So let me put this into an element, or just, and he'll also log it. So when you console.log, it will say hello world here, and then script. Okay. Yeah, but the selector all will select all elements of this, and the other thing is query selector all. The other thing is you can use the query selector to select the body. So the body element here, we just type the element name. In that case, you just type the element name. So what I should do is this. Let me leave it as it was. query selector dot. So we want to select the entire body, and maybe we said dot inner HTML. So with this you can change the entire HTML of the page, and you just start like a new sort of page. Maybe I can say div, close the div, and I have style. So style is for CSS. Have color red, maybe let me say green. Okay, that will be okay. So syntax is not a valid selector. Style dot inner HTML. Okay, so here we let me just name this as a P, and see if this P will work. So syntax, query selector, DOM1, global code, query selector dot inner. Okay, so this is the issue here. Query selector dot output. And you see we have this text called yes. So we are now starting to a bit we are starting to create some sort of value. So if here I put a background color, you can see that this can be done outside of the HTML. You just export the script, and then you just have very few words in your HTML page. So you can start to create a page from your JavaScript. And I think okay, so that's one of the DOM elements. So the query selector is one of the most used, and the second most used is the get element by ID, and it helps us to get an element by its ID. But with query selector, you can either select a class. If you are selecting an ID, you put a hash here. You can select an element, you can select the entire thing, and then probably you can recreate whatever you wanted that page to be, maybe on click. Okay, we are going to be seeing that. I need some light. Are we tired? Yeah, thank you. So we can easily do this with examples. And we are going to be trying to make sure that we bring all the concepts that we have been learning to creating these sort of usable components in HTML. Okay. Okay, so HTML head, and then we have a body. Okay, so we are going to look at the ID, getting an element by ID, and I think from there we shall proceed. And let's say we have a div. So an ID, shape, and class, so square. So there are times you've looked at HTML where they have written HTML code and there is nothing here between the divs, and you're wondering, why was this line written? Probably it's being manipulated by some JavaScript somewhere. And also this is one of the mechanisms on how you can debug code. So you have a project, they have told you change this color, change the outlook. And these are some of the things to look for. So we have a button. Can say it's going to be called disappear. Another button, it's called change. So yes, with this we can give, so we have these two buttons. So if I suppose this and go live. Okay, let me first really close most of these. I have simply two buttons. One is disappear, one is change. And I want to manipulate this button. I want to create probably a web page that when I click on this button it will disappear, this one will change. So styling them a bit, you can use external CSS or internal CSS. So for you to have to do internal CSS, use the style tags, and inside here this is where you put your CSS. So how do you access this is div. So the way you access an ID is hash. The way you access a class, the way you access an ID is prefix it with hash shape. The way you access the class is prefixing it with a dot square, and the way you access the element is just writing the element in CSS. So I want to access the square, I will say dot square, and here I can give life to a square. So width 100 pixels, height 100 pixels, and with even just with that, you can see that we have a square, but we are not seeing it. So let's give it a color. Background color. Yellow. And with that, we have this square. So we are manipulating our page just with JavaScript. This is very powerful. Probably you can add border radius, border. Let me see if border radius is there. Okay, 5 pixel. I think that's okay. Border radius 5 pixel. Just don't want it to be very sharp. Okay, it's curved a bit. So that's CSS, and I can also add on more CSS. So there's nothing you're actually learning that will go to waste. We shall see the CSS, the way it's being manipulated when we are looking at some of the frameworks that are used in React, like Tailwind CSS. So here, background color blue. Okay, that's it. So in here I want it to disappear, I want to hide. So I'm going to sort of create a new class that is not there. We'll call it .hide in the CSS, and to just have display none. So how do I make sure that, you know, with JavaScript I can bring this interaction to reality? Okay, so one of the things I can do is that when I click on this button for disappear, they're what we call JavaScript, I think they're helper functions. They're not helper functions, they're event listeners. So JavaScript event listeners will listen. There is really a lot of event listeners. Okay, let me write it somewhere where event listeners. For everything you do on the screen, there is a listener for it. Whether you're moving a mouse, whether you're clicking, whether you're recording, whether the mouse is just there beeping, there's a listener to it. And for those listeners, you can call JavaScript to do something to the user so that the user feels as interactive as possible with their website. So here we are just going to have one of the listeners is the on click. So these are some of the lists on about, on blur, on can play, on change, on click. They are really on drag if you want to drag something. So we are going to also be going through these event listeners as we explore how they're used on mouse move, on mouse over, on mouse out, on mouse wheel. Just you moving the wheel of the mouse, you know, that can trigger an action. And that's why JavaScript is really called the language of the web, because the imagination stops with you. Probably if somebody just remains just static, you could trigger an action. Maybe they want to watch that content like that more, and then you bring them such content on scroll, you know, where the position where the mouse is on their page. All that can trigger actions. So one we are going to look at is on click. And on click we are simply going to call a function, which I can name it disappear. I don't know whether that's them. Disappear. So this is how we call a function. And here I'm going to say on click change. So what we are doing is we are looking at the different ways we can manipulate the DOM, the Document Object Model. And we are learning these are many concepts, but we are learning them through doing something. I think it's the best way. And yeah, you can go and revise. So the disappear, we want a function that is going to call to add the hide class, so CSS, on the disappear button so that it disappears. So how do we do that? We can start as JavaScript file script. Meanwhile, these all can be external, and you are just calling them as external files. The CSS can be an external CSS file. The JavaScript can be an external JavaScript file. But for the sake of our examples, we are going to do everything in the HTML page. So since we are calling the function disappear, I'm just going to have the function disappear. So when we are doing function, it was as if we are just console logging, but now these functions are coming into play in real time. So for us to manipulate that disappearance, we are going to first access this HTML element, the shape. We can access it by ID. We can access it using the query selector and then access either the class, the ID, or the div. So when we access the div, maybe we can say query selector all, and we want to have, we can access it by element. That's the query selector. But specifically accessing by ID is always accessing by the ID name of that element. And for this, we are going to do that. We are going to say document dot get element by ID. So here we have an ID of shape. So if this was being accessed by a query selector, okay, let's access it by ID. Shape. So for us to make the button disappear is simply adding a class of hide to this disappear button. So the way we add that is by the property or by the method called class list. Class list dot add, and then we add the class name. Okay. How do I get to know all this? So these are done by, research and reading, because whenever I want to do something, the best way is to go and research it. Now, with class list, you can add a class that did not exist on a component on that component. And also with class list dot remove, you can remove a class that did not exist. If we are to access this by query selector, it would have been document dot query selector, and this would have been hash. So hash shape. Okay. Hash shape. So this is the difference between query selector. Query selector is broad. You can use it to access IDs, classes, and elements themselves. But document by ID is more specific, and you need to always maybe choose one depending on the circumstance. So for this now, we've implemented the disappearance of the button by adding that class. Okay, as soon as we refresh. So the other thing we have seen is we have the square and the blue. So all these are classes. So what usually the button takes precedence of is this blue class, the last class, but you can look at that later. So when I click disappear, I activate the addition of the hide class. This is how we have now started manipulating things on the screen. So I think in one of the sessions, Aaron was asking, how shall we use this? Every attribute is used as we manipulate the screen. And then we can have another function, and maybe we have the change button. So since initially the button is always blue, because we have the square and the blue is taking precedence, we can use the change button to usually change the blue back to yellow. And that means that we shall just remove the blue class. So I can call a function. So since the change function is here, on change call the change function. So function change maybe document.get element by id, get element by id. There is actually getting elements by names, by class name, by tag names. I'll try to be covering most of these, but this is get element by id. The id is it's the same div that we are working with, which is the shape. Dot class list dot remove. So class list has very many properties. We want to remove the blue. Why do we want to remove the blue? Initially, since the blue class, because here in the class, when we have a class having two attributes, square and the blue, means there is square and there's a blue, and blue is taking precedence. That means that whenever we remove the blue, the button will remain with the square class, and the square class has a background color of yellow. The button will change to yellow. Okay. So if I refresh this and just say change, button just changes to, if I click disappear, disappears. So there are other methods of the class list like toggle, and yeah, this is now real functionality. From there we can build something better. Okay, please you let me know if you're tired. Aaron, should we continue? Huh? Because tomorrow we want to start with React. Huh? Manuel, should we continue? Okay. So, just what I'm going to do in this session is simply look at different ways of, manipulating the DOM and bring these different ways of accessing, elements in our HTML. So let me say DOM3 HTML. And here we can have the body. Okay. So perhaps if you want to change the visibility, just we could use, if you wanted to change simply maybe disappear and appear, we could use the toggle class list, the toggle attribute. So here if I write document.toggle, this will simply disappear, and when I click disappear again, it appears, because the toggle component of the class list is one of the elements in the class list. So there is a lot that, and you could also add on like making sure that when the button disappears, maybe you change the text with the inner text attribute. Since we are getting a bit tired. Yeah, I think let's do one of our last DOM manipulations. So the reason I'm doing this is to encourage us to always be practicing, because these are the things that come up when you want to do something and you want to say, how do I do this logic? Perhaps there is a DOM manipulation for that logic. Okay, so for this, I think I would want to create a page where I can move something maybe from one location and drop it in another location. Yeah, I think that would be a good user functionality. So probably move a rectangle from one side, drop it in another rectangle. It can spark the start of a game. All this can be done by JS. So for this, I can start with a div. Just say we have a div. This is location 1. We have another div of location 2. And location 2, I want to drop what we've moved from location 1. Okay, so I can give it a class code box, and if there is a function, a method called onDrop. There's onDrag, onDrop. So on onDrop, I can call the ddrop method. I'm going to create this method. And is on drag over so this is just to show us that there are really very many of these inbuilt JavaScript methods that will help you manipulate whatever thing you want to manipulate on your page. And with actually this JavaScript, you can keep making what you're building better and more appealing. So here I can say nDrop. Can I leave this as a homework? I think this is going to be a big, a very big project, which will really take us time. So create a JS web app where you can move object from one location and drop it to another, location. Okay, so There are other things like event listeners. As we have seen, these have been, like when we say on drop, these are happening in HTML, but actually you can have these as listeners. Maybe you're just calling a function, or you're not calling a function. So let me create one. So in our body, we can just have a div and ID is give it a square, style it a bit, it's 100 pixel. Background color gray, I think that will be okay. Adjust that, and it has a word, click and see for yourself. So when you look at this div, there is no on click, because these are the methods you can give HTML are very limited. It will usually take in one method, but you can have very many functions in your JavaScript. So we are going to manipulate just this div. So if I go live, just click and see for yourself. Okay. One of the things that we can have is in our script is to call the window object. So the window object has an onload function, which we always listen whenever the page is loaded. So probably whenever the page is loaded, this will always execute. Yeah. Sometimes you want to store some data like locally. Probably that's how we come to play the game of Google. So I can say window.onload is a JavaScript function, and this comes from the Windows object. So what is always standing between you and finishing that product you are building is knowing which object manipulation do I need to use to come up with the logic that I want to see on the screen, or that I want to see the user having. Okay, so always you can access every element through document.either get element or query selector. Here we are going to say get element by ID, square. So instead of manipulating our HTML, here we can add an event listener. So it's called add event listener. An event listener. And so with this event listener, these are the same methods as we saw on click, on load, on in HTML. But for event listeners, we remove the on prefix. So instead of on click, it is just click, about, blah. And then the add event listener takes two things. Takes the method that is inbuilt and then the function you want to build. So the function, I'm going to take change color function. So one I'm going to build. But you'll notice that when you're writing your function here, you don't put the curly braces here. You just write the function name. So the add event listener takes in two parameters. The inbuilt method for the listening you want to do, if it is blurring, if it is moving the mouse, scrolling, and then the function to be executed. So here I can just have an anonymous function and execute it normally, or I can just call it like this. Okay. So now I can have my function here, just function for changing color. Change color. So this is how add event listeners work, and they are very crucial. Let red be assigned to math.flow. Yeah, so let green and blue, and I want just to change the color. So this dot style dot background color is RGB red, blue, and red. And yeah, that's with just those lines of code. So click and see yourself. It will just keep changing colors, and this is all window manipulation. So the window manipulation makes sure that window.onload will always load. So in case you want to load some data and store it in local storage, you use the window.onload function. And the event listener will always listen for event, abort, for events based on what you want to do. Get element by ID will get that HTML element you want to manipulate. You can actually manipulate an entire page, because you can get can do query selector and get the body, and then set .innerHTML and define an entirely new page. You can insert pages, you can remove pages, you can remove classes, you can add classes. So these are all possibilities. But due to time, I think we can stop there, unless those in the session want to continue. Aaron, should we continue? Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great time. So just bafiirako wana bafiiridde kodda.